Welcome to Panther Planet. We believe that the human experience is universal. We explore how our interconnected world is smaller than we think, and despite differences, the human yearning for connection, understanding, beauty, and truth are found both near and far. This season, Pereira, Eva, and Chris are going to show you how international traditions, cultures, and experiences impact one's identity as a local and global citizen. This is Pereira.
This is Chris.
This is Ava.
And this is
Panther
Planet.
The Panther Planet podcast is produced by the UW-Milwaukee Global Studies Department, UW-Milwaukee Language Resource Center, and UWM students. This episode, we are going to break down hustle culture. Today, we'll be talking about how normalizing the grind, success, relaxation, and the importance of balance affects different groups, American culture, and our mentalities. All right, so just starting off, what is hustle culture? Basically, there's many different definitions, but it kind of goes along the idea that long hours of work will promise financial and career success. It kind of promotes that there is always more to achieve, and it doesn't allow room for self-care and personal life. It is easier to think of a hustle culture as rebranding or evolving because it is now changing to a holistic lifestyle that prioritizes our social life, personal ambitions, health, while still working towards that financial support and stability.
Some negatives to the sides of hustle culture would be it's an unsustainable mental health consequences from that burnout, that emotional, mental, even physical burnout from just working so hard and pushing yourself to your max. Inability to rest because it's kind of like the fear of missing out, but in terms of productivity and work, like you just can't sit still and you feel guilty if you're not doing something. There's also like heightened anxiety because of that competition, because of the inability to rest, just the constant go, go, go and stimulation. And then you're also running up this emotional debt to yourself because of everything said earlier.
Like, I really like that you mentioned all these things because being part of a Latino household, you're always thought that you have to work twice as hard and do twice as much to get half as far. And that is so ingrained into our culture and the way that we are raised. And same goes for a lot of other minorities, that you are always thinking on doing work at all times. You could be on vacation, although that almost never happens, but you could be on vacation and you are always going to be thinking about work. Also, the same goes with the fact that there's enough space for people to race through the ranks of corporations, but we feel that since we have had so little opportunities in the past, we have to compete amongst ourselves and put others down to get to the top, which also keeps creating this big emotional debt to ourselves that at the end of the day is horrible for our mental health. But I must say that all these things have their pros and cons.
Yeah, I can absolutely speak on like the negatives for sure. Maybe not even the pros. Like there are good things, but like why we fall into it and what makes it appealing. So I'm going to start there first. So I think there's this motivation for success, productivity, to live a good life, kind of like what Pereira was saying, was it's not so much, workaholicism. It's more so, I want to be fit, I want to be healthy, I want to be beautiful, I want to achieve a lot. And there's like this American value, whatever value, I think we all have this value of productivity, success. You want to achieve, you want to do well, you want to be your best. I think that's natural. And working harder usually builds one's future. And so it's kind of like, well, the harder I work, like the further I'll get ahead. And in reality, that's many ways of everyday life, like especially if you're a full-time student with a job or a full-time caretaker as a parent and you're going to school, whatever it is, like we wear many hats each day. If you're an employee as a career professional, like being productive does matter. So I feel like that is why we fall into it. And it's not like there's good goals, I guess, behind that. And as for negatives, I feel like there's an avoidance of emotions. Emotional, physical, mental burnout can be exacerbated by these things because you're not avoiding the task. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this where you're doing something, you're like, I'm just going to do this, and this instead of starting this other thing. And I'm like, I'm going to be more productive if I do these instead of the one thing I'm avoiding doing. Right. You're actually avoiding like that negative emotion associated with it. And I think hustling, okay, well, I'm going to hustle and I'm going to do all these things instead of actually taking care of what's going on the inside.
Yeah.
I think that could be associated with being doing procrastination and being a productive procrastinator, because although you're procrastinating something that is really important as your mental health and yourself, you're being productive in other ways not to think about yourself, and that is something that we need to actually like be self-aware and look inside of ourselves and think, am I doing work because I need to be doing work and thinking work, or is it because I'm trying to avoid something else?
Yeah, I feel like it all is like super like connected, and like it all is kind of like two, how does the saying go, like two sides of the sword. What's the saying?
Two sides of the same coin.
Yes,
Yeah.
Or like
yeah,
a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
Yeah,
double-edged
there's
sword.
a
There you go.
couple.
That's what I was trying to think of, because I feel like yeah, you're being like a productive procrastinator, but you're also like avoiding something, and like you're kind of like doing so much work, and like you're comparing yourself a lot, like how you mentioned like, you know, like the TikTok video of like, this is my daily morning routine, like there's a lot of comparison, but like I think it's hard, especially for our generation, to understand like, you know, everybody does not live the same life. Like, we all have different experiences, different like needs and wants and realities, and I think that hustle culture in a negative sense brings up a lot of like comparison and like insecurities, and like makes people feel lazy when like you are working hard, and it's like we don't acknowledge that for ourselves. And so yeah, that's what I really think about.
But I do really like that you mentioned our generation, because more than our generation, I think that also it is very important to have the mention that the majority of people who think that they're not doing enough while they are doing the most are always minorities, because we have always had to prove ourselves and do X, Y, and Z to say that I'm worthy and I can do all these things, when we actually don't have to. And as we have been saying since the beginning, we could be sleeping and we are thinking about work, and we are thinking that we're not doing enough when we certainly are. And that's something important to have in mind.
Absolutely. I read an article preparing for this episode, and it was explaining that, when you're a model minority, like thinking, like I think the example was this woman, like a Cuban lawyer, and she was explaining that, like, I got to keep up this status of, like, this is who I am, and, like, working really hard is who I am, and achieving is who I am, just because of her, like, family's heritage and their past, and to keep up with the Joneses, like, this is what, I don't want to compare it to TikTok, but it's social media is just such a good comparison, because it's like, so-and-so's doing this, they're doing that, I must do this too, and it creates this group think of this is what's normal. And then you're so burned out that you actually can't work on the things that you need to.
Yeah. I think going off of that, it just kind of makes me, like, for, like, a personal experience, like, keeping up that image of, like, working hard and succeeding is not only good to, like, show other people or, like, my peers, but also, like, even to my parents, because I know, like, my mom, she'll be, like, bragging to some other Hmong lady that, like, my daughter did this, like, my daughter did that, and, like, in a sense, like, it makes me proud, right, because, like, words of affirmation, and it's, like, something that's already lacking within, like, the Asian culture and many other cultures, and so they verbally kind of, like, approve all the things you're doing, and so that encourages you to keep working hard, but, like, at the same time, it does acknowledge that, like, you know, it's okay to rest and that you already work hard every day.
Or it's that, I don't want to say, like, conditional love or, like, overstep on your relationship with your mom, but it's also, I'm only good and I'm always super loved if I fit the narrative or if I do certain things, which I'm really, in a weird way, I'm excited that you brought that up, because I feel like hustle culture, certain people can fall into it easier than others, and especially in terms of, like, a family dynamic and parents and children. And so with the oldest child in particular, I'm an oldest child, I know Chris,
Same,
I learned today,
yeah.
is an oldest child.
Same struggle.
Yeah.
I'm bonded.
Oldest of 4. The oldest child, everything you do from the outset is celebrated. Like, you're poured into the most because you're the first. And your parents are figuring out, I feel like all the parents do all the research before on their first, because it's like, okay, a trial run, like, you can't screw this up. And then you kind of have more responsibility, especially if you have siblings. You have more power and sway in terms of, like, with your parents and not only with your siblings. And that tends to create, like, this attention-seeking kind of traits. And, like, you're more likely to want structure and to be achievement-based and performance-based. And there are personalities and, like, circumstances where you don't have to be the oldest child. But sometimes we have these, like, predispositions that, okay, you're more likely to fall into hustle culture if you find yourself wanting
Also,
these
because
things.
being the oldest ones, when you have more siblings than just yourself, you find that you're always the person that your parents are harsher on, because you were the first one. They were harsh on themselves. We cannot screw this up, and therefore we cannot let them screw this up. So they're harsh on you, and that's why we think that their love is conditional. And that's why we do all these things, just to make sure that we don't lose their love, because if we do something wrong, we might lose them. And that's something that we are scared about.
Absolutely. Or you're going to lose your identity, your personality if you don't like perform, which is, yeah, absolutely. Kind of different tangent, kind of about like acculturation. Call somebody, learn a new hobby. Like, there are ways to make your life productive and happy that aren't taking away your peace.
And that is really important, because if you don't do that, you don't surround yourself with the right kind of people, you don't do the right things to take care of yourself and to be aware of yourself and the things that are going on. You can put that in the back of your mind as much as you like. You can put it in a little box and throw it at the end of the sea. Your body is going to bit you back in the butt, and it's going to show you have trouble, you have trauma that you have to solve, and either you face it up front, or I'm going to shut down. And I'm gonna make you go through it in a different way, and we don't want that. So you better like face your problems face forward and surround yourself with the right people to get that fixed before your body says, you either fix this yourself or I'm gonna do it my way. And
really.
that way it hurts. So
Yeah, like your body purges,
Yes.
or like your body holds on to all those negative emotions.
be
It can make you
mindful of
sick.
that, yes.
Yeah, I think that like really like emotionally and like socially, even like in a work environment, I think it's very important to set boundaries. So like in a work environment, like no, you can say no to like the extra hours the boss asks you to work, because no, like maybe you're gonna go rest, spend time with friends and family. And even like how you guys said, like surrounding yourself with the right people, like you don't always have to say yes to people, or you don't always have to respond instantly. Like, you can take your time. You can, like, it's okay to set boundaries. And even, like, emotionally, like, you can take your time to feel and process, but you need to understand that, like, you have to be able to fully move on as well, and to not, like, stay in that forever. I think it's, so, like, setting boundaries in, like, multiple aspects.
I do have one more. I read this interview with, it's like a Morris Berman interview. I'm not really familiar with a ton of his work, but he explained that like enchantment comes from like this Latin word cantare, which means to sing, and it's finding what sings for you. That's the people, that's the habit building, and like pursuing excellence. Like on some level, sometimes there's no song in your work, and you got to find the song. You know what I mean? You can't just go through the motions.
Yeah.
Yes, and at the end of the day, this whole hustle culture, if we take it to the extreme that most youth and adults are living in, can be detrimental to our health. And it's really important for us to understand that. For the younger ones, don't fall for that. And for the older ones who have already fallen into the trap of hustle culture, we need to learn to heal. And it's really important for us, as we mentioned before, to acknowledge the burden of the pressure. Yes, pressure is heavy on your shoulders. pressure will make you pay a toll on your health, not only mentally but also physically. So you have to acknowledge it in order to start working in the process of fixing it. Also, you have to listen to your mind and body, because the one is connected to the other, and if you don't take care of one side, the other side will be out of balance, and that is really bad. That's how people they overwork themselves.
Burnout or
burnout,
Fatigue.
Like, you are going to have health problems if you continue to work your body and mind without any health to it. If you are not thinking healthy about how to take care of your body, that is going to show, and then you won't be able to do the work that you were doing in the first place. So listen to that. But you have to think about your habits, and we are always thinking about work, and the standard process, the standard way of doing work, and we need to think, what are the habits that I'm doing, and are they helping me in order to be productive and successful and healthy, or are they just helping the productivity side? Because if they are helping just productivity and leaving me, the person, out of the equation, then that is not helping me. But you need to think and have in mind, in this type of scenarios when you are working, you need to be a part of the equation. Your health needs to be a part of the equation always. So that is something very important to think of yourself. And I know that for many minorities coming from a community that is very family oriented and community oriented, you are never thought to think of yourself first. You're always thinking of your family, your community first. And when it comes to work and all these things, we need to learn to put ourselves first and be a little bit selfish in that regard. Because if you don't help yourself, how are you going to help anybody else? So I think that it is very important for us to have a balance and to be in a happy medium between, yes, I am a person who thinks of my community and my family. It's something very important to me. But in order for me to think about them and be the best version of myself, to be the most successful and help them in the ways that I want, I need to take care of me and my body, who are the machine who is creating all this money, success, or whatever it is. So take care of yourself. Think of yourself. It's very important.
Yeah, as my final remark, I would say, just be gentle with yourself. There's so much going on in the world, and it's okay to be gentle to yourself. And did you have anything else to say?
Just,
Ava?
I think being curious about why you are falling into certain habits, instead of being, don't condemn yourself, just be curious. Yes. And, figure out why.
And also, last thing I'm going to say, I know I've been talking a lot, but people are also habits. Some people in your life are not meant to be there, and you have fallen into the habit of keeping them there, although they are not helpful to you emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically. There's types of people that they are on their own journey, and perhaps it doesn't match with yours. And if that thing is setting you back or hurting you, that's a bad habit that you have to break.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Panther Planet Podcast, where conversation, culture, and curiosity meet. Stay connected with episode updates, commentary, and more on our socials. You can follow us at UWM_Panther Planet Podcast. Be sure to listen next time.